If you glance at the headlines today, you probably saw something dramatic: Trump faces jail or Congress moves to impeach. It sounds like the loudest moment in American politics, a crisis hitting from every direction. But if you look past the graphics and breaking news banners, something more unsettling is happening. Two different branches of government are using two very different tools against the same president at the same time. And the real story isn't the headlines, it's what those tools actually are, how they work, and what it means when the country's guardrails are being tested simultaneously. Today, I'm going to break down exactly what's happening, why it matters, and what it tells us about the limits of presidential power in America. Let's start by grounding ourselves in the facts. In the House of Representatives, a congressman from Michigan has introduced a formal impeachment resolution against Donald Trump. This is House Resolution 353, filed in late April. Not commentary, not theater, a real document in the congressional record. It contains 7 articles of impeachment, each one alleging a category of misconduct: obstruction of justice, breach of the duty to faithfully execute the law, seizing Congress's power of the purse, abusing trade and war powers, violating First Amendment rights, creating an unlawful office, engaging in bribery and corruption, and, most dramatically, a charge invoking the word tyranny at almost the exact same time. In a federal courtroom, a judge has issued a ruling finding probable cause to hold Trump administration officials in criminal contempt of court for defying an order involving deportation flights of Venezuelan migrants. The judge ordered the government to halt certain removals and even turn planes around. Instead, the flights continued. He described the administration's behavior as willful disregard. So when you see headlines saying Trump faces impeachment and jail time, that's the convergence. Congress on one track, the courts on another, both signaling that presidential power has crossed a line. These tools, impeachment and contempt, sound similar in the headlines, but they serve different purposes. Impeachment is political and constitutional. It runs through lawmakers. It requires votes. It is ultimately about whether a president should remain in office. Contempt of court is judicial. It's about whether the executive branch is obeying the law. Judges can issue fines, penalties, and in extreme cases, jail time for officials who defy court orders. These processes don't coordinate with one another, but they can collide politically, and that collision is what we're seeing now. If you're watching from home, you might ask, has the House actually impeached Trump again? Does contempt mean he personally could go to jail? How much of this is real, and how much is symbolic pressure? Let's break that down. The impeachment resolution is the beginning of the process, not the end. The congressman used a procedural move called a privilege resolution. That's important. It means House leadership cannot ignore it forever. Eventually, the House must vote on it, send it to committee, table it, or otherwise take formal action. This is designed to force members to go on record. Now, are we anywhere near removal? No. To remove a president, the House must pass articles of impeachment with a simple majority. The Senate must convict with a 2/3 vote. We're not close to that. But this resolution is different from past ones. It's sweeping. It uses the word tyranny, and it is forcing a conversation inside Congress about whether the president's actions represent isolated misconduct or a systemic threat to constitutional order. Meanwhile, the court case is on an entirely separate timeline. When a judge says there is probable cause to find contempt, it is not the same as someone being handcuffed. It is the legal equivalent of a warning shot backed by evidence. The judge has given the administration a deadline to correct the violation, locate the migrants who were deported, or identify the officials responsible. If not, he can escalate to actual contempt findings. There are two kinds: civil contempt, to force compliance through fines or other penalties; criminal contempt, punitive, could involve jail time. Historically, courts almost never jail federal officials over policy disputes. But the fact that judges are even raising the possibility shows how unusual this moment is. It signals frustration. It signals institutional boundaries being crossed. And it signals that courts believe their orders are being treated as optional. Zoom out, and a pattern emerges. Congress says the president is bypassing the law, ignoring spending limits, abusing war powers, and undermining constitutional protections. Courts say the executive branch is openly defying lawful orders in immigration cases. Both branches, in their own language, are painting the same picture: a presidency testing the outer limits of constitutional restraints. This is not a fight about one scandal or one court order. It is about whether the president accepts the idea that Congress writes the laws and courts interpret them. For decades, presidents of both parties have pushed executive power. But what is new is the frequency and openness of the defiance, and the idea that violating a court order can be framed as strength rather than a breach of the rule of law. And this brings us to the structural question. What does the Constitution allow when a president simply rejects constraints? Impeachment is supposed to deter misconduct. Contempt is supposed to enforce compliance. But both rely on something deeper, the assumption that presidents will care about institutional consequences. When those assumptions fail, institutions escalate. That's why we re-hearing judges speak bluntly about contempt and lawmakers use words like tyranny. They're signaling that normal tools aren't working. Neither branch actually wants a showdown. Congress doesn't want impeachment to become meaningless. Judges don't want to jail federal officials. But they are signaling that the system is reaching its limits. So where does this leave us? Not at the end of a story, but at the beginning of a stress test of American institutions. Impeachment articles on one side, judicial contempt warnings on the other, both questioning whether the presidency recognizes the boundaries of its power. And that's the real headline, not Trump faces jail, not Congress moves to impeach, but this: the guardrails of American democracy are being tested in real time. Whether they hold depends on how Congress, the courts, and the public respond next. If you want deep, clear, non-sensational breakdowns like this, explanations that go beyond the headlines and into how the system actually works, make sure you subscribe, follow, and turn on notifications. Because the next chapter of this story is already unfolding, and you deserve to understand it before the next wave of headlines hits.